Jane Tierney, Chain Reactions, and the Importance of Supply Chain Management. This is episode 12 on All Mavens branded podcast. Virtually every product or service travels through a supply chain that has a myriad of moving parts and plenty of expense and risk involved. I spoke with Jane Tierney, a consultant who helps companies save money, gain efficiencies, and mitigate risk. Our conversation touched on the key aspects of her universally applicable specialty. And in this episode, here are some key takeaways that might be relevant to just about any business. And so I don't do interviews. What I do is have conversations.
Okay.
And it's like, and you and I met. First of all, let me say, how the heck are you?
I'm a bit frazzled today, but that's okay. I've got another...
Well, that makes two of us and about 50 other million people, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's going on? Or maybe you don't want to talk about it. Just
no,
busy?
It's okay. I have a taping this afternoon for a conference in September. So
Nice.
I've been trying to kind of frantically get ready for that and make sure my script is good and practice and all that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh. Oh, good. Well, so you and I met on one of Mary Kravitz's WatchMeThrive.com. That was a little plug. Anybody out there that really wants to get connected with fabulous people like Jane, then go to WatchUsThrive.com and sign up for her twice monthly. 1 month she does a speed networking, which is really good. And then the next one is a mastermind. And I don't know about you, Jane. How's it been for you? It's been great for me.
I find those very useful. They always spark ideas for me, and they give me lots to think about. So, and Like you said, I've met some great people through that.
Yep. So when the whole COVID thing happened, lockdown, everybody's jumping on Zoom and everybody wants you to get on their Zoom. So I don't do that anymore. I'm a member of the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce here in San Diego. So I spend time there and on Mary's calls, and that's it. That's actually enough. If you do follow-up, it's great. So you and I met, and what really piqued my interest is that I had just listened to a podcast. Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, they do a podcast called Pivot, and it comes out on Tuesday and Friday, and it's all about what's going on in tech and business and stuff like that. And they were talking at the time about Amazon in terms of how just they have a superior supply chain. And then Jane and I met on Mary's Zoom call, and we got thrown into a breakout room, and I found out you work with supply chain, and I went, yay, perfect. This is what I want to talk about because I'm really intrigued by it, and I've completely gone through your website, and I get it. So I'm just kind of want to find out more because you've been doing it a really long time, huh? So why don't you introduce yourself as you would like to be introduced? I do it this way just because, hey.
Okay. Well, I'm Jane Tierney, and I founded Purple Link to help companies find the dollars that are leaking through their supply chain. They leak through because there's too much risk and excess cost in the supply chain. So I help them find that cost and risk, reduce the risk, try to remove the cost, and then I work with them to put tools and processes in with their staff so that they can keep those costs and risks out and low and sustain the savings year over year.
So I'm curious, right off the bat, when we talk about supply chain, is it limited to only physical items?
No, it's services and goods. It's really a lot about the procurement and the spend that you have. And then it's also about where your goods go in ultimately to who's your ultimate customer. The supply chain starts with very, very low level. It starts with taking, for instance, minerals out of the ground. If you take bauxite out that you make into aluminum and aluminum sheets and aluminum castings and all that, iron you take and makes steel. You take the gold out and that gets plated and that gets put on your phone. So at the very lowest level, it's that. And then you go through whatever it takes to make the parts and components that ultimately someone turns into a finished good. Then you take that finished good and it may go to retailers, it can go to distributors, and ultimately, eventually, it gets to the final customer who's going to use that until it has no useful life. And then the supply chain goes on because either you recycle it, you reuse it, you repurpose it, and then it goes back into other components.
Nice. So trucking must be a big part of the supply chain, huh?
The transportation and logistics is a big part of supply chain.
Yeah, it's just, I have a friend of mine that used to be a nurse, a male nurse, and after doing it for like 20 years, it became a truck driver.
Ah.
And Jim is great. And he pointed out to me, there's nothing probably that you can think of that doesn't arrive via at some point in transportation and trucking.
Oh, everything goes through, well, transportation can be air. You can put it on a plane. You can put it on a rail car. You can put it on a ship, on a boat. And then you send things through pipelines, too. If you think about utilities, water, and a lot of gas goes through pipelines. And then you also have information, which is a vehicle for moving. You have the internet, which is a vehicle for moving information from place to place. If you think about all the things that you download on your computer, the music that you download, the programs, the apps, the games, any of that's information, and that's part of the logistics channel too. And then you're talking about the information and the cash that goes along with the physical good.
Nice.
You spoke earlier
ahead.
about goods, but services. So I talked to you about the supply chain going from end to end, but services are there all along the way. So companies sell and buy not only goods, but the services that go with those. And then sometimes you buy independent services or deliver independent services.
Yeah, well, it really piqued my interest because I'm starting a new company called Heard Not Seen Media, podcasting company. Been doing it 15 years, but part of it is putting together a team of people. And I talk about supply chain. It's like there's this whole workflow that goes on. So most of it is digital at this point. But, at some point I'm probably going to engage in you and just see if we can make things more efficient and cost efficient, really, is what we're trying to do. My goal is to make podcasting as easy as possible for anybody that wants to start. And it keeps putting it off, So, so what is typically an ideal client for you?
An ideal client is one that recognizes they have a need to improve the skill sets of their staff, that recognizes that the supply chain organization, which can be purchasing, it can be part of the production, it can be the logistics team, the planning, demand planning, S&OP, which is sales and operations planning, any of that a manager recognizes needs to be more robust, stronger, and deliver more to the organization. It's not uncommon today for purchasing departments to purchase items that are worth like 70% of the finished goods, the cost of goods sold. So when you are spending that kind of money, then you need to make sure you're spending it correctly and you're getting the most value for the dollars that you're spending.
Got it. Interesting. So what size companies do you work with typically?
I work with very small companies, like under 50 million, and I work with medium size, and I have a couple of very large companies that I work with, which are like over 100 million. I would consider that large.
That's got to be keeping you pretty busy.
Well, I'd always like to be busier, so
Yeah.
I'd like to have more.
Yeah. We always want to have more. Yeah. So what is most interesting about the supply chain that you think most people don't know about? I mean, you've already told us a lot. I mean, I really get it, that it's about efficiency and everything. But what is it that you think most people just really don't know about, business people?
I think they think it's very transactional, and there's a lot of strategy that needs to be developed, and it needs to be deliberate. Sometimes it is very transactional and very reactive, but when it's done well, it's proactive and it's very strategic. Again, you're spending a lot of money for the company, so you want to make sure you're spending that in the right places. And I think another piece of that is working with suppliers, which is really one of my passions, is managing suppliers and making sure that you work with them to reduce risk, that you understand the risks, that you measure, monitor their performance and give them feedback, which really starts with setting expectations up front so that they understand what the range of expectations is and what they are supposed to be doing and agreeing to do for you, and then measuring that and holding them accountable for that, which involves supplier relationships, because you need to make sure that you are in touch with them. And I'm not talking about transactions that you do on Amazon. If you go in and order things from Amazon, that's fine. There's not much relationship involved there. There's very little negotiating. It's a product that's offered broadly. Most of the things on Amazon you can find in 8 or 10 different places to buy. You shop price and you pick the best price, and that's fine. I'm talking about the suppliers that do something custom for you, or that you buy something from them because it is vital to your goods, you're using their intellectual property, or it's their design that you're incorporating into your design. And so then you need to make sure that you're aligned on how you're using that. So if they make a change, then you understand how it's going to affect your product. And if it's your intellectual property and you want someone to make that part or component or subassembly for you, you want to make sure that they're going to honor that intellectual property, treat that carefully and confidentially, and that they're going to make what you need in the fashion that you need for the price that you need, and deliver it to the place that you need when you need it.
Yeah, well said. I used to work with a company in Australia called Alkaway, and I started selling their products. There's alkaline, really great filtered water systems for residential. You just hook it up to your faucet or mount it underneath. And all the product was designed basically in Australia, but it was made here in California, because they wanted it be done somewhere where the water standards are really high. But there was a constant issue with the supply chain, meaning they would have to put an order in like 6 months in advance, which really wreaked havoc with forecasting and everything else. The company just couldn't get it done sooner, and they were often late. And, Australia, and actually the warehouses here, would completely run out, and it was just always a problem. And I recognize in the context of supply chain, there was some real problems there.
You brought up a couple of components there. You talked about it takes 6 months. That's what we call a lead time. So if from the time you place the order, it takes 6 months to get it, that's a very long lead time. And generally you want to work with the suppliers to figure out how to shorten it. And there's ways you can do that. Some of them cost a little bit of money, but mostly it goes back to the strategy and having a plan to execute and make sure that you can do that. So that's one thing. You talked about getting it from Australia to here, which there's lots of ways to get parts from Australia to here. You can put them, as I said before, on a boat. You can put them in the air. In the air is going to cost you a lot more, but it's going to take less time. So you have to kind of trade that off. What is worth the timing to shorten the time or to manage the cost? And then you talk about demand and keeping things in the warehouse. So that's the demand and supply balance. It's the sales and operations planning that we do. And it also has to do with inventory management and, sending signals and understanding what those levels are, should be, could be, kind of thing. So you touched on a lot of different aspects.
It seems to me there's a lot of moving pieces in the supply chain.
There are.
Yeah. So I was kind of curious. I don't know if you have any comment about this, but can you identify what or how Amazon has actually become so great at supply chain? And it's being forecast by a lot of industry analysts that they're taking this to the world. Because they are on a mission. Living here in Southern California, they actually have a facility towards the San Bernardino area, and I've had the good fortune to tour that a couple of times. And I am a bit of a factory geek. My husband will tell you I've dragged him through factories in many different places. When we visit someplace and they say, here's a factory tour, I'm like, okay, let's go. So he kind of goes with me, and he doesn't mind if there's treats at the end, like maybe going through a winery or a brewery, or even a Hershey's candy factory back east. So you look at those factories and you look at what Amazon does, and they've broken a lot of the rules and they've kind of remade them in their own fashion. They have all of their own internal systems to manage the inventory, and they have huge amounts of inventory, as you can imagine.
One of the things that you learn early on in inventory management is probably what your grandmother told you, is there's a place for everything and you put everything in its place. So traditional warehouses had locations where you put part A, part B, part C, and it was in this row, on this shelf, at this bin, whatever. So Amazon threw all that out the door, and if you go there, you see that they stock parts in kind of cubby holes, depending on the size. The particular Amazon facility I toured has kind of medium-sized parts, so they don't have things like washing machines and refrigerators that are very large. And they don't have tiny little things either. And they do that purposefully. But in this case, they had maybe bins that were like 18 by 18 inches, and then a depth probably of about that. And I don't know the exact measurements, but in one section that had a location, it had a row number, a shelf number, and a bin number. They would have things like a Harry Potter book and a package of diapers and a game, and maybe we were there before Christmas, maybe some Christmas items. And whatever would fit in that area, whatever fits goes in that area. They have rules about not putting like products in the same bin, meaning that the Harry Potter book series has 7 different books. So you would not put 2 Harry Potter books in the same bin, because that might lead to a mistake where you could pick the wrong one. So whatever's in there would be the same. So it's cleaner that way. But doing that, they utilize their space a lot better than having a designated location for anything. So there's people that when the trucks get unloaded, they take the goods and they put them in the shelves and they put them wherever they fit. Everything is barcoded so that they know that this item went into this area. And then when they get orders, they get lists of the orders. You go shopping in the inventory racks. They have some of that very automated, where the carts move around. It's often still picked by people, so that you make sure that you pick the right thing, so they don't have robot arms everywhere picking things. In some instances, and some things that lend themselves to that, they do. But then you pick all of those items, and then they get sorted into the orders, and then they get packaged and shipped out. So they have created this model and set this up for themselves for their kind of business.
It all started out with books.
It did.
Yeah.
And books is still a very important part, but man, you can buy almost anything on Amazon.
Yeah, I know. So it sounds like, there's probably a lot of robotics going on, right? How much did you see that was robotic? I mean, could you get a sense for that?
Well, as I said, a lot of the putting things away and actually picking it is not robotic. It's manual. But they have a lot of automation versus robotics. So when they're packing orders, the order comes through and say you ordered 3 different things, that will be in a bin on a conveyor. And if you're the packer, you get that bin, you scan all the barcodes in there, and it will tell you that it's missing something or it's not. When you scan those items, it tells you what box. They have different size boxes. It tells you what box you need. It tells you if you need that extra kind of packing now, those little pillows that they put in to protect things. It prints out the label. I mean, it dispenses the tape that you need to seal the box, and it goes very, very quickly. So the box gets put together, the label gets on it, and it gets shipped out. And then later on, they have an automated process because that label has a barcode on it. And if they weigh each package automatically, and it's very quick, but if that package doesn't weigh what it should weigh to have those 3 items in it, then it gets rejected. And so either something is missed or there's something extra in it, it will get booted. So they make sure that they have the right things in the box. And that's really smart. You don't get 2 boxes of things if you order 3 or 4 different things. But they very much protect that, and they have lots of checks and balances along the line.
So do they have people running all over? I'm trying to get a picture of this, running over the warehouse based on, because you said it's not by location. So people are running all over the warehouse. And I've heard before that some of these warehouses are so huge, they're like partially running like half miles or miles marathons to get to these one thing way over there. And then they come back. Is that what you experience?
what I saw is that these warehouses are huge. They are very large. And I was there in the October timeframe or September timeframe, getting ready for October for the gear up to the holidays, which is always very busy. And they pointed out, we have this available space, but in a month when the Christmas rush is in force, we're going to have extra people here. We're going to have that area is going to be busy, and we're going to have this. Because they have such large area, they don't really have people. They don't want people running from one end of the building to another. So they try to give you shopping lists that have items located within a certain area. So I might be on the north side of the building, you might be on the south side of the building, and I'm shopping within a few different rows to pull the things out, put them in the cart, and then they get sorted by the orders. So it's a lot of automation versus robotics.
What was the most impressive thing you saw?
I think the shipping and the packaging, that to me was just fascinating. The way that they calculate what size box that you need. They have different size boxes, but not hundreds of different size boxes. And so you don't have to think about that. You don't have to calculate that. The system does that for you. And their systems, all their software is proprietary. It's all developed internally. It's very, very strong, and they are continually updating it, making it better, and managing that demand and supply. And so they take all the demand from everywhere in the world that people order things, and then they route that around to make sure that you can get those products as quickly as possible. One other thing that Amazon does that's really clever, that's kind of a big brother thing, but if you go on Amazon and you shop and you're looking for things and you click on different things, you don't put them in your cart and you don't buy them, but if you've looked at them 2 or 3 times, the software actually tracks that, and they will move parts to your location geographically to be ready to respond to you very quickly. So if
That's
you've been
incredible.
eyeing something, maybe you've been eyeing a camera or a microphone for the last month or so, and you've looked at it 3 or 4 times, if they don't have one in a location close to you, then they may actually move product from warehouse to warehouse, so in anticipation of you buying that. So they are looking at your buying habits, and they know what you buy, and you get a lot of those ads and indicators of that.
So if I spend a couple of weeks actually just sitting on Amazon, clicking on a whole bunch of stuff, it's a good chance that a whole lot of this inventory would end up in my location, huh?
It would end up closer to you. Now, you and I are in Southern California, so there's a lot of things here anyway. But if you're in a less populated part of the country, like in the Midwest, in the Dakotas, Nebraska, where there's not millions of people in one location, they will do things like that might help.
Interesting, fascinating. I get this sense that you're actually really, really busy, and I don't really want to use a whole lot of your time here, but is there anything else about supply chain that is just fascinating to you? And in fact, let me ask, how did you get involved in it?
I came into supply chain in through what I call a side door, and a lot of people I know, a lot of colleagues, a lot of my friends did the same thing. And when I say that, what I mean is I started my career, my undergraduate degree is in industrial engineering. So I went to work for aerospace companies, and I worked as industrial engineer for a good chunk of my career. So I learned a lot about manufacturing, and I knew how factories worked and things like that. The particular factory that I worked in was shut down, and we all lost our jobs. So luckily I had gone back to school and was almost finished with my master's when that plant shut down, so I was looking around for a job. And I got a job with Hewlett-Packard, but it was in purchasing. And they needed a project manager to come in and work with suppliers to manage those for a new product. So the job was pretty cool, and I was interested in travel and working with suppliers, and I knew a lot about different kinds of manufacturing, so all that worked. But I was not a purchasing person. I was an engineer. I went to engineering school, and I wanted to be an engineer. So it took me almost a year before I could say I worked in purchasing, because that's not what I did. But when I got over myself and really settled into it, I realized I really liked the job. I got to use a lot of the experience that I had as a manufacturing engineer, and work with a lot of different factories and a lot of different processes that I wouldn't get to work at working in any one factory. And then I got to go all over the world and work with factories in different countries, work with sister divisions in different countries and learn about the cultures and the people. And I always like to travel, and I always say business travel is not vacation, but you still do get to meet a lot of people, and you get exposed to things that you don't get exposed to going into the same office every day. So I really like that, and I really found that the world is a lot smaller than I thought, and that there's a lot of opportunity.
You ever heard of a company in Oregon called Tektronix?
I've heard of them, yes. Don't know much about them.
Yeah, I could talk about them for a long time, being from there. So when I was going to college at Portland State University, I was actually studying music, but I had a job at Tektronix, and a lot of my friends did. But I wasn't trying to get a job there to work my way up, because that's not what I was interested in. But I worked on an assembly line that basically built the frames for the oscilloscopes, and my job was putting in PEM nuts. You know what a PEM nut is?
I do know what PEM nuts are, yes.
I'll bet you do.
I do.
Yeah, so it was assembly line. There was like 12 of us in this area, and the woman that actually managed it she was in her 70s. And I found out later that she was Howard Vollum's cousin. And Howard Vollum was the CEO of the company and stuff. And short little kind of fun story is I was studying classical music at the time, specifically classical guitar and playing. And they hired this new kid. And this kid came in, and he was like 6'2" or 3", big red hair. And he was kind of just like a country boy, and he was a lot of fun. His name was Dan. And I worked there a year, putting myself through school and stuff. And Dan and I became really good friends at Tektronix. We never saw each other outside. But one day, he said, "You play classical guitar, right?" "Yeah." "Well, my brother's getting married in the park in Reed College. And would you be willing to come and play some music for the wedding?" I said, "Sure." So I showed up. Well, it was Howard Vollum's son. Dan was Howard Vollum's son. And there was about 3,000 people at this wedding, and here I am, So it was just really, really a lot of fun. Dan and I just always had a great time together. And that was kind of testimony to the Vollums. It's like the kids were taught, you're not special, you're not privileged, you're going to work your way through school. You're going to pay for it yourself.
Well, and go learn something about the business. So I think that's a great, a great direction to have your kids. And you can learn a lot working in any kind of factory, because everything has to come from somewhere, your clothing, your electronics, your the paint on your walls, all of that has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. So one question I always like to ask people, and I'm kind of surprised that people don't often go, well, check and listen to the podcast and realize I'm going to ask it, which is, in your life, can you name one time that you would consider to be a defining moment where everything changed?
Wow, I have a couple of those.
That's good.
One that recently struck me was really funny. I was a good student in high school, and I wanted to work on the newspaper and ultimately the yearbook, which I did. But in order to do that, I had to take a typing class. And so I took a typing class. Well, I found out about the first week or the second week that I hated it. And the teacher and I did not get along. And I took 2 quarters of that, one semester, and got probably the only C I got in high school. And I said, I'm dropping this class. I am not staying in this. I needed the semester to be able to qualify to work on the yearbook. So I had enough. So that was well and good. And I was actually the editor of the newspaper and the editor of our school yearbook. It's a small school, but still, I'm proud of that. But I was signing up for my senior classes, and they said, you need a practical arts class. And I said, what's practical arts? I was taking chemistry and physics and 4th level Spanish and on the yearbook. And they said, you need practical arts, which is like typing. And I said, well, I took typing. Yeah, but you only took a semester. You need a whole credit. And they said you could take typing again, but you'd probably have to take the whole year because you can't really come in at semester. I said, no way. They said you could take home ec, and I am the oldest of 6 kids, and so I knew how to cook. wasn't interested in sewing, and was not going to go take a freshman home ec class. So I said, kind of, what else is there? And they said, you can take shop class. And I said, oh, okay, I'll take shop class. And they said it as a joke, and I thought, no, that's fine with me. Good with that. So I took shop class. In my first couple of weeks, I was in there, and I was in a freshman boys shop class as a senior girl, and it was, fun and games for me is the easiest thing. And one day, about 4 weeks in maybe, the teacher was handing papers back, and he pointed at me and said, you stay after school. You stay after class. And all of the freshman boys thought that was really funny that I was in trouble. I had no idea what happened. And he asked me, what are you doing in this class? And I said, I'm trying to graduate. And he said, no, what are you doing in this class? And I said, are you kidding me? I need this credit, and this is the easiest. He said, do you like this? I said, this is the easiest class I have. I have, all these other senior level classes. And he said, you need to take drafting. And I said, I'm graduating. And he said, what are you doing this period? And I said, I have like 4th year Spanish or something. And he said, well, what are you doing this period? And I said, well, I have a study hall. And he said, that class is full. And he thought for a minute, and he said, not anymore. Starting tomorrow, you come to that. I'll find you a drafting board. He put me in his drafting class. So from that drafting class, I did well in that. Didn't have a study hall for that period, but I worked it out. I still have the grade cards where it still says shop on it, and he had to change it and make it drafting. But because I took that drafting class and the physics and the chemistry and the math that I took, I went into engineering school. And because I got into engineering school, I graduated as an engineer, and that took me all these different places. So not liking that typing class was something that I kind of always laughed at, and I finally realized that was a game changer. If I had completed that full year of typing, I would not have been in drafting. Having not been in drafting, I really don't think I would have been in the engineering program. Even though I had the math and the science I needed, I didn't think of myself as a engineering type person. But once in college doing that, the math was okay. I could do the homework and pass the classes, and it would have helped if I studied a little more. But getting into that curriculum and seeing what I could do with that, that's been an incredible foundation for me. And because I did that and worked in lots of factories, or worked in factories for a few years before I got into supply chain, that gave me a really great base for manufacturing. And I use what I learned there often.
Yeah. So, given the story you just told, and thinking about a younger generation of people that are just coming out of school and college, or even in school, college, whatever, how would you describe the wisdom in what you learned there that somebody could walk away with?
Well, I have the good fortune to be able to be an adjunct professor at California State Northridge, and I teach operations management. After I got my engineering degree, I have an MBA, which you need to teach at the college level, and I really enjoy teaching this. So I see these kids all the time, and I call them kids because they are students. But what I tell them is focus on what you're doing. Get your degree. Doesn't matter what it's in. If you can't get the exact degree that you want, get a degree and then go pursue working what you enjoy doing. I've had more than one student who told me, for example, I had a very good student, one of the best I've ever had, was an accounting major. And he had a really great internship with a top accounting firm. And he was very excited about that. And I said, you're really good at because I teach operations management. I said, you're really good at this, and operations needs people that understand this, and you seem to enjoy this. He said, oh yeah, I love this class. But he said, I want to be an accountant. So he said, I have this internship. I'm going to do this because I think that's going to teach me a lot about how companies work, and I can learn more about how they produce things. So he came back after the internship, and he said, I hated the internship. He said, I was doing audit kind of stuff. I was assisting on audits. And he said, I found out that's really what they do a lot of, and I don't want to do that. But he said, I'm about to get this accounting degree. And I said, get the accounting degree. You're so close, finish it, but then go pursue something that you want. If you don't want to work for a public accounting firm, that's fine. Accountants are valuable in many different areas. So go be controller of a company or the CFO or CIO of a company and use your background in accounting and do some of that, and then find a way that's going to give you more excitement in the job that you do every day. So don't fear getting pigeonholed, and don't give up because you went pretty far down one road, because you never know where life's going to take you. Like I said, I worked as an engineer. I thought my whole career would be in engineering. And yet the best job I could find was with a really good company, Hewlett-Packard at the time, and it was not in engineering. It was in purchasing. And so I didn't really know much about buying, and to this day I would be a lousy buyer, but I understand the function, and you can learn a lot of things, and if you like it, it's not that much work.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Once again, I wanted to respect your time. So, how did you name your company?
So, when I founded my company, I founded it as Supply Chain Innovations, because what I wanted to do was to take an innovative approach to supply chain and supply chain management. So I launched it as that, founded it, incorporated it, it's all legal. And my friends told me that name stinks, basically. And I was like, I thought it was good. And I had Supply Chain Innovations, and I had a logo of a shamrock because my name Tierney is an Irish name. And I thought that would be good, the color green. And my friend said, no. And I have a marketing person that I work with, and he said, whenever I see shamrocks or anything, I think all you're doing is basing this on luck. There's no meat behind it. And I said, okay, well, that's not going to work. If that means that to you, it didn't mean that to me at all, but it did to other people. So I worked with him to put a brand together, and we talked about what to call the company. And I didn't want to call it after myself, which I thought was boring. So he knew I did supply chain, so he came up with the link, and he had some other names, and he finally just said, well, why don't you just call it Purple Link? And I said, oh. And he was kind of joking, but it kind of resonated, and we both talked about it. Purple is a symbol it's kind of a neutral color, and yet it has the connotation of royalty. It has the connotation of spirituality. It has the connotation of creativity and innovation, which I wanted to do. And then the link, of course, is for supply chains. So this is the purple piece is kind of the secret sauce, and the link is the supply chain. And then the purple-link.net is because all the other purple links were taken in the domains.
Yeah, you might want to keep an eye on the .com version. I had that happen with my name. It's just like, somebody took my name, really? JohnBeathan.com, B-I-E-T, really? And it's just like, I couldn't believe it. So years later, and it was like 2 years ago, I'm sitting at my desk, and it's just, I haven't checked this for a while. So I went out and checked it. It was available, and I grabbed it.
Oh, I don't have mine either. My name is, my middle name is Elizabeth, so my initials are Jet, and I looked at different kinds of versions of that, and I couldn't find one that was open, but I do check from time to time to see if I can get that domain.
Yeah, I've been educated on SEO by somebody here, actually just moved back to Reno, but it's a company's called Beacon SEO, and this guy's extremely good at on-page, basically landing pages to get leads in. So I named the podcasting company Heard Not Seen Media. Heard Not Seen. That's what podcasting is. Although you and I can see each other on Squadcast here, we don't record the video. This is all audio. But he had pointed out to me, it's pretty important to actually have something in your domain name. Makes it a whole lot easier for search results. So although I have heardnotseenmedia.com, I registered imaginepodcasting.com, and that'll be used specifically for lead generation. So I got to thinking, and you're telling your story, hey, you might want to take a look at supplychainwhatever.com, and you could actually set that up just to do lead generation and stuff. It might work out pretty well for it. Where are you in Southern California?
In the Thousand Oaks area, outside of Los Angeles.
Yep. It's really funny. I never go to Los Angeles. So when people say they're in Los Angeles in Southern California, I go, well, that's north to me. I mean,
I lived in San Diego a lot of years. I felt the same way.
Yeah, I'm in Carlsbad, just north. Awesome. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
You can set up a call with me at callwithjane.com. I did get that domain. Or you can reach me at my email, jane@purple-link.net. Or you can go to info@purplelink.co. And my website is there, and there's a way to get in touch with me at that as well.
Yeah, I have this funny feeling you're extremely good at what you do.
Well, thank you. I think I am.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
All right, Jane. Well, take care. I'm sure I'm going to see you around the block on one of Mary Kravitz's calls. Are you still going to be doing those?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm sure I'll see you there. So next time, you can always get this podcast wherever you catch your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or just really anywhere. And until next time, we'll see you later.